Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Megan Peasley, and I am the Iowa SourceLink Program Coordinator at the University of Northern Iowa's John Papa John Entrepreneurial Center. Here, we work with the Iowa Economic Development Authority to bring the Iowa SourceLink platform to all business owners. Whether you're looking to start, grow, fund, or even exit your business, Iowa SourceLink is here to help you. We provide step-by-step guides, make helpful referrals to our nearly 400 partners, and house the Business License Information Center. We also have the pleasure of presenting these webinars in partnership with the Iowa Department of Revenue. In today's webinar, Nick Belkey, Terry O'Neill, and Matt Bishop will be providing an overview of the requirements and changes relative to filing sales tax for out-of-state businesses. Before we get into that, I have a few housekeeping things to go over. Today's webinar is being recorded and will be available within the next week. You will receive a link to today's recording in the same email that you will receive as proof of your attendance. The slides for today's webinar will be shared momentarily in the chat box by Haley Ham. Haley and I will be sharing other resources and contact information if and when they're brought up during the webinar in the chat box. Please enter any questions that you have into the Q&A box located in the bottom half of your screen. We do ask that you focus on asking general questions that could apply to everyone. If you have a question specific to your situation, we recommend that you talk to the Department of Revenue directly. We're going to hold off on answering the questions that come through until the very end. And with that, Nick, Terry, and Matt, I'll let you take it away.
All righty. Thank you, Megan. I'm going to go first. I am Terry O'Neill, longtime Revenue Service Specialist with the Department of Revenue. And we're going to start off today talking about sales tax basics for out-of-state sellers. If you've ever been to one of our webinars before, you know, one of the things that we always do is we have to give our disclaimer. The disclaimer, and I'm just going to read this to you. Please be advised that the information in this presentation contains informal opinions and are only applicable to the factual situations referenced and to the statutes in existence as of the date of this presentation. The Department of Revenue may take a contrary position in the future to what is stated today. Any oral or written guidance or opinion given by department personnel not pursuant to a petition for a declaratory order under Iowa Administrative Code 701 4.7 is not binding on the department. A little bit about the Department of Revenue. We have some visions, some missions, some values here at the department, and I just want to touch base with you on those. Our mission here at the department is to serve Iowans through the responsible collection and generation of revenue to support the public good. The vision that we have here at the department is Iowa will be a state that uses innovation to make it simple to comply with revenue laws and deliver fun and fair lottery experiences. Our values at the department include integrity first, dedicated to teamwork, and ready to serve. So again, just wanted to let you know a few things about the department. As always, when we do a presentation, we do have some goals in mind. We want to give this information for someone so you'll know what's in it for you. What are you going to get out of this? Hopefully, you're going to understand sales and use tax responsibilities for remote sellers and marketplace facilitators, including the following. We're going to discuss permit and filing requirements. We're going to discuss Iowa use tax. We're also going to discuss local option sales tax as well. So hopefully you will get some of this information and this will be beneficial to you. Remote sellers and sales tax requirements. Generally, sales tax must be collected when a sale is sourced to Iowa. If the purchaser first possesses the product in Iowa, if the product is delivered in Iowa, or if the service is first used in Iowa. Those would be situations where sales tax would generally apply, again, assuming these are taxable purchases. Sales tax is paid by the final consumer, and it is collected by the retailer. It is then remitted to the state by the retailer. And you might be thinking, okay, Terry, why are you telling me this? The reason that we state this is if there's ever a question about a refund, okay? If there's ever a question, if somebody paid some tax in error, paid some tax they shouldn't have, the final consumer, the one that actually paid the tax, is the one that can obtain a refund. And that's, we just wanted to clarify that. If a retailer collects some money that they should not have, they have to remit it onto the department. If there's ever a question about a refund, the retailer does not get a refund of that tax that was paid by their customer. The customer is the one that needs to get the refund. So I just wanted to clarify that. What is taxable when it comes to Iowa sales and use tax? Well, basically, all tangible personal property, specified digital products, or enumerated services are taxable unless a specific exemption has been written into the Iowa law. Some common taxable services would include the following that are listed on our sheet, listed on the screen, excuse me. Appliance repair, electrical repair or installation, lawn care and landscaping, photography, cosmetology, janitorial services, interior decorating. These are just some examples of some taxable services. If you want more information on taxable services, check out our website. We've got a publication that's called Iowa Sales and Use Tax Taxable Services. This is going to have a list of all of the taxable services. And again, you can find that on our website. We'll give you the web address at the end of the presentation when we're providing our contact information. The Iowa state sales tax rate and the Iowa sales tax use tax rate, the state use tax rate is 6%. I did mention that we've got some things that are exempt from tax as well. Some common exemptions, and this is not all of them, but some of the more common exemptions that we have, the first one listed there, services performed on or connected with new construction, reconstruction, alteration, expansion, or remodeling of a building or a structure. If you were at our webinar last month, we talked about this very topic. We had our webinar for sales tax for the construction industry, and we discussed services on or connected with new construction, reconstruction, alteration, expansion, or remodeling. Another exemption we have, services performed for an employer. An example of that, I am an employee here at the state of Iowa, Department of Revenue. And if I get done with this webinar today and the boss says, hey, Terry, we need you to go out and mow the lawn outside the Hoover building up in Des Moines. That is a lawn care service. However, lawn care service is normally taxable, but since I am performing that service for my employer, I would not have to charge the state sales tax in that situation. The state of Iowa would also be exempt, but that's a whole nother discussion for another time. But again, services performed for your employer do not have to be, are not subject to sales tax. Items purchased for resale. This is a common one, the resale exemption. And just to give you a quick example of that, the resale exemption, if I am in the business of selling office supplies and I purchase pens and pencils and Post-it notes and all those types of things that we usually use in an office, I can purchase all of those things that are going to go into my store, into my inventory, tax exempt for resale. The object of the game is when I sell those products to my customers, I'm going to collect tax from the customer unless they are exempt for some reason. So that's just a quick example of resale for you. The next one down here, a common exemption, food and food ingredients for human consumption. A quick example of that, let's say that you're going to go to the grocery store and you're going to buy a loaf of bread and you're going to buy some mustard and you're going to buy some cheese and some lunch meat and lettuce and those types of things. You're going to take it home and make a sandwich. Well, those items, if you purchase those food items from the grocery store, you will not pay sales tax, again, because there is an exemption for that. Another common exemption that we have in Iowa is containers, packaging. This is something that if it's sold to a retailer, maybe sold to a manufacturer for the purpose of packaging or facilitating the transportation of tangible personal property sold at retail, we've got an exemption for that. This is just one example of where a packaging container could be exempt from tax. Prescription drugs and medical devices. Again, Iowa has an exemption for that. So if any of you are taking a prescription drug, that's something that as long as you got the prescription, you will not pay sales tax when you go to the pharmacist to get your prescription drugs. Delivery charges are another common item that people have questions on different times. And delivery charges, and I want to make sure that I clarify for you the delivery charges that I'm talking about. If I am the retailer, I am the seller, and I've got the product here with me at my location, and I am going to deliver the product to you, my customer, the delivery charges to get the product from me to you, the purchaser, is going to be tax exempt. So it has to be separately stated on the invoice, but it is something that's going to be exempt from tax. Remote seller. What is a remote seller? Well, a remote seller, generally, it's someone that makes retail sales of tangible personal property. Possibly they could be making some service sales, specified digital products into Iowa, but they do not have a physical presence in Iowa. One of these remote sellers, they may make sales into Iowa a variety of ways. They could be making sales over the phone. They could be making sales over a website. Maybe they've got a mail order catalog, something along those lines. That would be a remote seller, no location in Iowa. A physical presence. If someone does have a physical presence in Iowa, this is a permanent or temporary place of business. Maybe they've got an employee here in Iowa or some other sales representative of some type. Maybe they've got property located in Iowa. Common examples are retailers that have a store. That's a physical presence. Maybe they send sales reps to Iowa. That would establish a physical presence. Maybe they're set up at a temporary booth to sell items at a fair or a trade show in Iowa. Those are examples of individuals, of businesses that would have a physical presence here. What is a marketplace facilitator? A marketplace facilitator, generally, this includes a business that facilitates retail sales by providing infrastructure. Maybe they're going to have a place that you can list a product on a marketplace. Maybe they can communicate offers and acceptance of a retail sale. Maybe they provide physical or electronic marketplace support, things like customer service, fulfillment, or storage services for retail sales to occur. They can also be collecting the sales price, processing payments, or receiving compensation from the retail sale. A marketplace facilitator may include a consignment store, could include an auction site, or an online marketplace. If you want more information on marketplace facilitators, if you want a better description, you can see Iowa Code Section 423.14a, and that'll provide some more details to you on the topic of a marketplace facilitator. When it comes to Iowa sales or use tax, there are certain thresholds that can apply. If someone has a physical presence in Iowa, they are required to collect tax if they have nexus with us. Again, two types of nexus: physical nexus, economic nexus. Physical nexus, I gave you some examples on the previous slide, but it's a permanent or temporary place of business, an employee coming to Iowa, a rep coming to Iowa, or property in Iowa. Again, these examples, I'm repeating myself, but having a store in Iowa, sending sales reps to Iowa, setting up a temporary booth to sell items at fairs or trade shows, that would establish physical nexus. And if you have physical nexus, then you do not have to meet an economic threshold. If you have an economic nexus in Iowa, what creates economic nexus? Well, if we have a remote seller and the seller does not have physical nexus, so again, they're located outside of Iowa, and they have $100,000 or more of gross revenue from sales into Iowa in a calendar year, they're going to be considered to have economic nexus. Marketplace facilitators, if they make or facilitate $100,000 or more of gross revenue from Iowa in a calendar year, they can also have economic nexus. Someone that is a seller, either a remote seller or a marketplace facilitator, if they do not have physical or economic nexus with Iowa, they can still voluntarily voluntarily registered to collect and remit Iowa sales tax. They're not required to. Again, the thresholds are there that tells when retailers are required to collect our tax. The last bullet point on here mentions about voluntarily collecting tax. And you might think, well, who in the world would want to do that? Well, I had one recently. I talked to a gentleman was asking some questions. This business happened to be located in Colorado. And they had some questions, and we went through. I was showing them the rules and showing them things on our website to help determine if they had the economic threshold or the economic nexus and were required to collect tax. Based on the information provided, they did not have economic nexus. However, this gentleman said he still wanted to voluntarily collect Iowa tax. And I said, okay. I explained to him how he could do that. And his comment to me was something. He says, even though I'm not required to collect Iowa tax, I want to do that. He says, I was born in Iowa. I grew up in Iowa. And I liked it. I had a good experience there. And I want to make sure that I'm collecting the proper tax and helping Iowa get their tax that's due. And I thought, well, that was very nice of him, very noble of him. But that is an example of why someone may want to voluntarily register and collect our tax. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing here for a minute, and I'm going to turn this one over. Nick is going to take over. So just a second here. Let me switch.
Okay, I think it says I'm screen sharing, but I can't see it on my other screen. Can you see my screen, Terry?
Yep, you're looking good.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, everyone, and thanks for joining us today. Again, I'm Nick Belkey. I'm a policy director at the Iowa Department of Revenue, splitting duties with Matt Bishop on sales and excise tax uh, responsibilities here. And I'm just going to drill down to get started here on a couple of things that Terry mentioned. So he was talking about the $100,000 threshold. So again, remote sellers and marketplace facilitators must collect Iowa sales tax if they have $100,000 or more in gross revenue from Iowa sales in a current or prior calendar year. So gross, and these are paraphrased definitions here. Again, I'd encourage you to go to Iowa Code section 423.14a with questions, and you should always know the statutory or rule or legal basis surrounding your sales tax responsibilities. So I'd encourage you to look into that in addition to our website guidance as well. So we have some definitions here to help you understand that $100,000 threshold a little bit better. So gross revenue here means all revenue from Iowa sales, and Iowa sales means all retail sales, which includes taxable and exempt sales as well as wholesale, and then the sale for resale exemption as well. So if you're thinking about, well, I make $110,000 of sales into the state, but half of those are exempt, that doesn't actually impact that threshold. So make sure you're paying attention to all sales that you're making into the state, all sales that are sourced to the state of Iowa. So if a seller has multiple locations, the gross revenue is measured on the total sales into Iowa from all locations. So if some of your shipping is coming from Illinois, some of it's coming from Minnesota or wherever else, but you're the same entity, you've got to add up to that $100,000 or more or less based on all of those locations. It's not a location-based analysis. As Terry mentioned, and we'll go over this a couple more times, you've just got to have nexus, right? And here we're talking about economic nexus. If you already have physical nexus, so if you already have a brick and mortar, we're not doing this $100,000 analysis. And then we'll talk more about marketplace facilitators as well, but but like Terry mentioned, sellers that make Iowa sales only on a marketplace might not need to collect and remit sales tax. Okay, again, meeting the threshold. So if you meet that $100,000 threshold, you must register to collect sales tax in the state. That analysis is made on the current or prior calendar year. So if a remote seller met the threshold in 2024, it must collect at least through December 31st of 2025. And I'll run through an example on that here shortly. If a remote seller meets the threshold for the first time in mid-2024, it must begin collecting starting on the first day of the next calendar month that starts at least 30 days from the day it first exceeded the threshold. And I think this example on the next slide is probably the best way to understand this rule. So let's say we have, excuse me, company S, who is a remote seller. They don't have physical nexus in the state. They did not exceed the sales threshold in 2024. But in September of 2025, September 15th to be specific, and that does matter, S exceeds the sales threshold for the first time. So they get over that $100,000 sales into Iowa. Again, that's taxable and exempt sales. Company S has to register to collect Iowa sales tax and must begin collecting Iowa sales tax on November 1st of 2025. I'm going to jump back here. So we're applying this rule from bullet point 3, right? So if a remote seller meets the threshold for the first time in mid-2024, it must begin collecting starting on the first day of the next calendar month that starts at least 30 days from the day it first exceeded the sales threshold. So September 15th, we're not going to start in October because that's, 16 days or 15 days away. We're going to jump that 30 days ahead, and then the next month after that is November. So that's, if you're scratching your head saying, well, why is it in October? That's why we're applying that 30-day rule. And then S must continue to collect through at least December 31st, 2026. In this case, so you got to continue collecting and remitting for the full next year. The sales volume in 26 and later years will determine whether S must collect Iowa sales tax after December 31st, 2026. So if this company, let's say, was kind of on the cusp, and then I don't know, sales, hopefully this doesn't happen, but sales are down a little bit for that company in the following year, then there would be a new analysis as to whether that company had to continue to collect and remit based on their economic nexus. Okay, let's talk about sellers that are using marketplace facilitators, and we're going to use the term. We went through marketplace facilitator and what that is. Terry did a good job of explaining that, so I'm not going to rehash that. But we haven't defined a marketplace seller, so I did that in the last bullet point here, and that's just a seller that makes retail sales through a marketplace facilitator, regardless of whether the seller is a remote seller or a retailer with a physical presence in Iowa. So now that we know what a marketplace facilitator is and we know what a marketplace seller is, we can start to understand that relationship a little bit better and who might be responsible for collecting and remitting if that's your situation. So if we have a marketplace seller and they only make retail sales in Iowa through a marketplace facilitator, and that facilitator collects Iowa sales tax and applicable local option sales tax, which Matt's going to talk about a little bit later. The marketplace seller does not need to obtain a sales tax permit or file Iowa sales tax returns. We're not looking to double collect, and the facilitator has taken care of that obligation. Okay, so sales tax, like in the second bullet point, will be reported and paid on a return filed by the facilitator. That's what the department will expect. But if the facilitator did not meet the threshold, the seller must collect Iowa sales tax and applicable local option sales tax on retail sales made on the marketplace if the seller has nexus with Iowa. And I think this is on a future slide, but it's just really important if you're utilizing a marketplace facilitator to understand whether they're going to file a return and collect and remit sales tax on your sales, especially if you have nexus with Iowa. Still on that topic, and I guess I jumped ahead there, but I'll reiterate it because it's such an important point. Marketplace sellers, again, should contact the marketplace facilitator to determine when the marketplace will begin collecting Iowa sales tax and applicable local option sales tax. Again, just make sure that you're on the same page with your facilitator if that's the arrangement that you're utilizing. If a remote seller makes marketplace and non-marketplace sales, so let's say you have your own website, but you're also selling through a marketplace facilitator and you're making sales into Iowa, utilizing both of those, both your website and the marketplace facilitator. As a remote seller, you have to add the total gross revenue from the marketplace and non-marketplace sales to determine whether you meet the threshold. So that $100,000 threshold that we've talked about. And then you've got to collect Iowa sales tax and applicable local option sales tax on non-marketplace sales, assuming that the marketplace facilitator in this example is collecting and remitting, and assuming that you have nexus. So more on kind of goofy situations that can pop up. So if you've got marketplace sales, if you're a retailer, and you've got a brick and mortar or otherwise have a physical presence in Iowa, and you make marketplace and non-marketplace sales through your store, for example, Iowa sales, you've got to collect Iowa sales tax and applicable local option sales tax on non-marketplace sales, regardless of your gross revenue or the number of sales or transactions made. Remember that the economic nexus threshold does not apply to sellers with a physical presence in Iowa. So again, we're not doing that $100,000 economic nexus analysis when you have a physical presence. So we would expect you to collect and remit on the sales made at that physical location. Here's an example to illustrate that point. So Seller C is an Iowa-based business with property and personnel located in Iowa. So we know they've got physical nexus based on what Terry told us earlier. Seller C has $80,000 in gross revenue from Iowa sales. They make $10,000 gross revenue from Iowa sales through a marketplace facilitator. So they're selling some stuff online through that facilitator. That facilitator does collect Iowa sales and applicable local option sales tax. The remaining 70 in gross revenue comes from Iowa sales made directly through Seller C in its physical location in Iowa. So in that case, Seller C has to collect and remit Iowa sales tax and applicable lost on the 70,000 in non-marketplace sales. On its Iowa sales tax return, Seller C should report 80,000 in gross sales, but you can take a deduction for 10,000 in sales on which the marketplace facilitator collected Iowa sales and applicable local option sales tax. Hopefully that example was helpful. Special events. So we're talking trade shows, flea markets. Excuse me, got something in my throat. Farmers markets and events like that. So if we're working on a special event and we're trying to understand what our sales and use tax responsibilities are, you've got to understand whether a special event sponsor is a marketplace facilitator. And they can be a marketplace facilitator if they do both of the following bullet points. They provide infrastructure or support for retail sales, and they collect the sales price or other compensation for sales at the event. We've got some helpful examples on both of these bullet points on our website. So some examples on this first bullet point that provides infrastructure support for retail sales would be if you list a product or service for sale on a marketplace you own, operate, or control, including an electronic store, booth, catalog, consignment shop, auction, internet site, or other forum. If you communicate offer and acceptance of retail sales through a marketplace you own, operate, or control. If you provide a physical or electronic marketplace that sells products or services owned by you or a marketplace seller, regardless of whether you control the products or services sold, providing customer service, fulfillment, or storage services, setting prices for products or services available on your marketplace, or branding sales as your own. The next bullet point collects the sales price or other compensation for sales at the event. We've got some additional examples on our website, and I'll run you through those really quickly. So directly collecting the sales price as an example, providing payment processing services, receiving consideration from the facilitation of retail sales, collecting payment from a purchaser and transmitting it to a marketplace seller through a third party with which you have an agreement for the collection and transfer of the payment, regardless of whether the third-party payment processor is compensated for their services, and then providing virtual currency used to purchase property or services. So those are the two things that have to be satisfied in order for a special event sponsor to be a marketplace facilitator, and some examples of how those two bullet points can be satisfied. Now, if the special event sponsor is not a marketplace facilitator, all retailers at the special event must obtain an Iowa sales and use tax permit, collect Iowa sales tax, and file the Iowa sales tax return. We do not offer temporary permits, and after the special event, retailers must continue to file Iowa sales tax returns, even if they don't have sales or cancel their permit. Just want to put a plug in if you're shutting down your business, or if you're seasonal, do ensure that you continue to follow up and file your zero return, or again, if you've winded down your business, cancel your permit, because we will expect to continue to receive returns as long as the permit is active. This one I'll also mention. Check out Iowa Code section 423.33 subsection 3. We've mostly been in 423.14a today, but there's an additional statutory reference that's relevant to you if you're looking at special events. Kind of more generally, just want to mention that the state of Iowa is a member state of the Streamlined Sales and Use Tax Agreement. It's a state compact. There are 20-something states that are currently active members, but it's the result of a cooperative effort of 44 states, DC, some local governments, and then the business community is involved as well, to simplify and make more uniform the sales and use tax collection and administration for retailers and states. The goals are to minimize costs and administrative burdens on retailers. Streamline does encourage remote sellers selling to collect tax on sales to customers living in the Streamline member states. And it's supposed to level the playing field so that local brick and mortar stores and remote sellers operate under the same rules. Another benefit of Streamlined is that sellers can outsource their sales tax administration responsibilities to a certified service provider, or CSP, as we call them. I encourage you, if you're interested, to check out more information on streamlinesalestax.org. They've got a lot of useful stuff there, and they can certainly help you understand your responsibilities if you're selling into Iowa and other states. So, good resource. I'm going to briefly talk about permits, and Matt's going to pick it up, I think maybe about halfway through our permit conversation. So again, we've talked about permit requirements. Business with Nexus in Iowa must register for a sales and use tax permit and collect Iowa sales tax and any applicable lost. It's illegal to make taxable services without a permit. It's against the law. It's easy to get a permit. It's free. if you have questions about how to get one after the meeting, let us know. But I think Matt's going to run through the easy steps to get a permit. So yeah, if you're making taxable sales into the state of Iowa, make sure you have a permit. A business does not need to hold an Iowa sales tax permit or file sales tax returns if the business does not make any taxable sales into Iowa. But if you begin making taxable sales in Iowa, you have to collect sales and applicable loss, get an Iowa sales tax permit, and begin filing Iowa sales tax returns. And an out-of-state seller with multiple locations only needs one permit for all locations for the state of Iowa. Okay, I think that's my last one, so I'm going to stop sharing and let Matt take it from here.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. Let me get my screen set up here. Nick, Terry, can you give me a thumbs up if that looks right? All right, very good.
Yep, looks good.
All right, very good. Thanks all. The last slide, talk to you a little bit about how to register for a permit. Give you a plug for govconnect.iowa.gov. This is our one-stop portal for a lot of your tax needs in the state of Iowa. You can log in, you can get an account with GovConnect Iowa, and that will allow you to apply for a permit. You can manage your sales tax permits, other permits that you might need from the Department of Revenue. You can file your returns. You can do all sorts of good stuff. This, like I said, it's a one-stop portal. If you're doing business in the state of Iowa, please check out govconnect.iowa.gov. It'll allow you to electronically take care of all of your permitting and filing needs. When you file your sales tax return, you are required to file that electronically through GovConnect Iowa. New starting with from this past legislative session that takes effect July 1st. If you do not file electronically, if you try to submit a paper return, we cannot accept that. We will not consider it a valid return. We will just ignore that paper filing and estimate your tax liability and likely impose penalty and interest because you did not electronically file in time. So remember, you need to file electronically on your sales tax filings. If for whatever reason you absolutely cannot file electronically, you can contact us for permission to file using other means, using paper or whatever else might be available to you. Your filing frequency, most retailers will be required to file monthly. If you collect at least $1,200 in sales tax per year, you're going to have that monthly filing requirement. What we mean by monthly then is that your return and your sales tax payment is due at the end of the month following the month that the sale occurred. So you make a sale in July, your sales tax return and your sales tax payment will be due August 31st. So the end of the month following the month of the sale. If you have less than $1,200 in sales in a year, you can apply for annual filing where you'd only need to file one return per year, make one payment per year. That return would be due January 31st every year. We do have a third option, which is seasonal filing. If you only make sales up to 4 months a year, then you can select those 4 months and you'll only need to file a return, make a payment in those 4 months. Like I said, it's seasonal. Maybe you only sell at a farmer's market or you only come to the state 2-3 times a year for a trade show or some special event. That would be a seasonal filing option for you. Those filing deadlines are extremely important, kind of like what Nick said. If you have an active sales tax permit, we're going to expect a sales tax return on a monthly basis or an annual basis or a seasonal basis, whatever it is. If we don't get that return, we're going to assume that you had sales in that month and you just didn't file your return, and we're going to estimate your tax liability. So we'll need to get some things sorted out there if you get a billing in error. So again, make sure you submit that filing every month or every year as required, even if you report no sales to us. going to talk real briefly about local option sales tax. Local option sales tax is imposed by cities and counties. It is up to 1%. It is imposed on the same basis as sales tax. So that's the good news there. If you make a sale into a loss jurisdiction, it's 6% statewide sales tax plus usually 1% local option sales tax. There's no special permit required to collect the local option sales tax. Like I said, all the same sales that you'd collect sales tax on, you would also collect the local option sales tax if you're in one of those loss jurisdictions. We have a tool that you can use to look up the correct rate for any location in the state. The good news is almost every location in the state does impose that full 1% local option sales tax. But if you make sure you double check, there are a couple of jurisdictions in the state where there is no local option sales tax. So just make sure that you're in a local option sales tax jurisdiction before you collect that 1%. Talk real briefly about use tax. Use tax is imposed at the rate of 6%. It's on the same basis as the sales tax. The use tax is complement to the sales tax. The intent is if somebody makes a taxable sale or uses a taxable item in the state of Iowa, but for whatever reason sales tax was not collected, then use tax would be owed. There are a handful of transactions where sales tax wouldn't be imposed, but use tax would be, like an airplane. Let us know if you're selling airplanes in the state, and we can give you some specialized guidance there. Almost all exemptions will also apply to use tax. Again, it's on the same basis as sales tax. Use tax is usually remitted to the state directly by the purchaser. In specialized circumstances, it can be collected by a retailer and remitted to the state that way. But usually it comes about when somebody just doesn't pay sales tax in the state of Iowa, usually not paying sales tax anywhere, and they might use something in Iowa. We would collect the use tax at that point. Kind of what Terry was saying earlier about voluntary registration. Maybe you're not required to collect sales tax in the state of Iowa, but you still want to voluntarily collect in the state, and you might wonder why somebody would do that. Use tax is a big reason. I know a lot of purchasers in the state of Iowa really appreciate when the retailers will collect the sales tax, so the purchaser doesn't need to worry about use tax. So kind of collecting use tax, even if not required, is a useful service, or even collecting sales tax, even if not required, is a useful service to your purchaser, so they don't have to worry about this use tax. If you're making taxable purchases on a regular basis and you need to pay the use tax, you'll still need a sales and use tax permit. When you file your monthly or annual sales and use tax return, you would mark that as taxable purchases on the return. And if for whatever reason you do it on a very irregular basis, where you would need to pay the use tax, we do have a non-permit use tax return. It's just a fillable form you can use where you don't need a permit, and you can just make those very irregular use tax remittances to the state. One last thing before we go. We're focused on sales tax here, but don't forget, if you make sales in the state of Iowa, you may have an income tax obligation. If you're doing business in the state of Iowa, that can give rise to filing and paying income taxes in the state. Typically, selling anything in the state of Iowa is going to qualify as doing business in the state of Iowa. So just don't forget, if you're selling in Iowa, talk to your tax professional, see what you need to do for your income tax obligation. These are contact email address and phone numbers for the Department of Revenue. If you have any questions, go ahead and send us an email or a phone call. We've got a link there for a guide on our website for remote sellers. Make a plug to subscribe to email updates. You can sign up for exactly the kind of information you want, so we're not spamming you with all sorts of random tax issues. You can sign up just for those sales tax updates, and we'll send those directly to your email inbox, and you won't have to worry about missing an update on sales taxes. I think that is the end of our comment, or end of our content. I don't know, can we open it up to questions from the audience?
Yeah, you guys are more than welcome to open it up for questions. Also, you guys were answering questions in the Q&A box throughout this, so if there's any you think would pertain to everyone, please feel free to bring those up as well.
Yeah, so I see Q&A. Terry might be typing up a question. I covered use tax earlier. There is no local option use tax. There's only a local option sales tax. So for whatever reason, you're only paying the use tax. You do not need to worry about that additional 1% local option sales tax. If you're paying the use tax, it's just a straight 6% use tax. You don't need to worry about the extra 1% for local option sales tax. It's probably exactly what Terry just said.
Another thing I just wanted to throw in there as well, Matt. I think I mentioned earlier about our website, and just in case you did not have our web address, it is revenue.iowa.gov. So revenue.iowa.gov, and that's the department's website where you can find our publications. You can get into GovConnect Iowa if you're trying to register with the department. And you can find a lot of other information on there as well.
Yep, and I'll put in a plug, even if you don't remember the web address or whatever that we've pointed you to. There's a really good search bar up on the top of our website. I use that all the time. I'll just type in whatever keywords, and that usually brings up the thing I'm looking for. So you usually don't need to worry about exact web addresses or exactly what things are called. That search bar will usually get you to the right document if you're looking for it.
Well, it looks like we're not getting any new questions in the Q&A, so I'm going to go ahead and close us off. Thank you. Oh, never mind. We just got one as soon as I said that.
We can, we can go through the questions. The top one, when we pay for equipment repair by a Cedar Rapids vendor, don't we have to remit the full 7% as use tax? If you're not exempt, you should be paying sales tax to that Cedar Rapids vendor, assuming you're in Iowa. If for some reason you're outside of Iowa and you're shipping equipment into a Cedar Rapids retail or repair business and they're shipping it back out to you outside of Iowa, maybe the sales tax would be a bit different. But I mean, if you're in Iowa and you're using an Iowa vendor, you should be paying sales tax to that vendor. If for whatever reason they don't charge you sales tax and you're owed sales tax, yes, you would pay use tax on that. You would just pay the 6%. And if you do have that situation where a vendor is not charging you the sales tax, boy, we'd appreciate you letting us know. We have a link on govconnect.iowa.gov to report tax fraud. Yeah, let us know if one of your vendors isn't charging sales tax, or if you know a competitor who isn't charging sales tax right, please let us know. We would love to investigate that and follow up on that and make sure all retailers in the state of Iowa are following their sales tax obligations. Let's see the next question. Explain more about the delivery fee. Terry, I remember the delivery fees were in your segment. Do you want to talk a little bit more about those?
Yes, I can explain a little bit more about that. A delivery fee, again, in the example that I gave, if I am the seller and you are the purchaser, I have the product with me and I want to get it from my location to your location, you the purchaser. The delivery fee or the transportation to get it there is exempt from tax. Again, it has to be separately itemized on the invoice to you, to the customer, for that fee to be exempt. If you've ever looked at our website, we've got a sales and use tax guide. and that does have information in there on taxability and exemptions. And it has a section in there on freight, shipping, and handling charges. You can find some information in that area of that publication. So hopefully that'll helps out explain things a little bit better for you. Please let us know if it does not. But what if we have a customer that does not want to pay the tax? Well, they if they don't want to pay tax, are they exempt for some reason? If they're claiming to be exempt from Iowa sales tax, then they need to be providing the vendor with a completed sales tax exemption certificate. Blank sales use excise tax exemption certificates can be found on our website, but that's what they should be doing. Sales tax is not optional. If you're not exempt for some reason, you're buying taxable goods, services, specified digital products, you got to pay the sales tax. That's not optional. Looks like we've got another one here. This one's an Illinois question. If we have an exemption in Illinois and the work is being done in Illinois, but being shipped to us in Iowa, would we, the contractor, pay the tax on what happens? It's for software we're buying and reselling to a customer. Okay, I'm not sure you're saying that there's an exemption in Illinois if you purchase something and took delivery in Illinois. But excuse me, if you purchase something and it was delivered to Illinois, it's exempt from tax, but it's being shipped to Iowa. Would we, the contractor, pay tax? Okay, I'm not real sure on exactly what's going on. It's for software we're buying and reselling.
Yeah, it kind of sounds like maybe a sourcing issue. Yeah, I mean, if you're buying software from somebody in Illinois, but you're first using it in Iowa, yeah, I mean, if you're using it in Iowa, then you'd have you get into use tax. I mean, if this is for a business, a lot of your specified digital products would be exempt in the state of Iowa anyway. I mean, I think we're kind of talking in circles. I think we need to have more information to give you a good answer. Maybe try to contact us afterwards and give us any more details that you can. Yeah, I think it's hard to answer on the info we got.
Yeah, if you want to email the department, our email address, idr@iowa.gov, and you can email your question to the department. If you want to put attention Terry on it, I'll sure take a look at it as soon as I can. You can certainly do that. So that's an option for you. And anybody that doesn't get a question answered here in this session, by all means, reach out to the department, email us or call us. The contact information was on the final slide. What do we got? They aren't charging us tax.
I think that's probably a follow-up while we answered a different question.
Okay.
Say we answered that live.
What do we have? We are often only charged state tax on equipment sold to us in our Iowa location. We are a manufacturer. Is the equipment exemption only applicable to contractors? I think what you're asking about, Iowa does have an excise tax on certain construction equipment. That is a 5% excise tax for self-propelled building equipment, among other things. But things like backhoes and bulldozers that are used for construction work, there is a 5% excise tax on that. That does not apply to manufacturing equipment. In Iowa, qualifying manufacturing machinery and equipment is exempt from tax. If it is something that does not qualify, it would be subject to the state sales tax and the applicable local option tax. So if I don't know, I'm not sure whether there's specific situation that you may have, but again, that excise tax is only for certain construction equipment, not for manufacturing equipment. For the seller that is paying sales tax voluntarily, does the customer have to pay the tax? Well, as I see it in the situation that we're describing here, I gave an example earlier of a business from Colorado that the gentleman was raised in Iowa and he wanted to make sure he was collecting the Iowa tax. The customer would owe use tax if they didn't pay the tax to the vendor. They would still owe Iowa use tax on it. So in my the way that I see it, based on the situation you've described, the customer, they have to pay it one way or the other. They can pay it to the retailer. That's the easy way, or else they're going to end up having to come to the department and pay it.
So the question, how often do you have to conduct a utility study for manufacturers claiming utility exemption? Those utility studies are often connected to a sales tax exemption certificate for energy. Those exemption certificates are required to be renewed every 3 years. The utility study would also be redone every 3 years, just to make sure that those utilities are still up to date. And I'll put in a quick plug, our general sales tax exemption certificates, not for energy, but for other purposes, like the machinery, manufacturing machinery equipment that Terry mentioned earlier. Those have a new option where their blanket certificate would be good indefinitely. So if you're making the same purchase, so if you got a purchase between the same seller, same purchaser, as long as you have at least one transaction per year, those general sales tax exemption certificates will be good indefinitely. So there's no need to renew those general exemption certificates as long as there's some sort of regular business between the same seller and purchaser. And then I'll hit the last one, should be pretty easy. Are there any purchases in Iowa only subject to a 1% tax? No. There's a 6% statewide sales tax. I think Terry mentioned the 5% on heavy construction equipment. There's a few specialized taxes like hotel motel is a different rate, vehicle rental, cigarette tobacco. Those might be higher, but there's nothing that's only a 1% sales tax rate. Let's see, we are pretty much at 1 o'clock and I don't see any more open questions.
So I'm going to go ahead and close us off. Thank you again, Nick, Terry, and Matt, for sharing information with us today about out-of-state sales tax. As a reminder, this webinar was recorded and will be available to watch on our website or by searching Iowa SourceLink on YouTube within the next week. If your questions were not answered today, your questions will be emailed to Nick, Terry, and Matt alongside your contact information. But I do think we got through everyone today, so we are not going to worry about that. As a reminder, Iowa SourceLink does not provide a continuing education certificate for your attendance here today. We do, however, send out an email to all those who participated within a few days after the webinar concludes that you can use as your proof of attendance. The next Iowa Department of Revenue webinar will be held on August 13th at noon Central Standard Time. This webinar will provide an update about law changes as they relate to the Iowa Department of Revenue enacted during the 2025 legislative session. Check out the registration link for more information by visiting iowasourcelink.com and navigating to our tax webinar page to sign up today. Until next time, have a great rest of your day.